Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up. So in the month of December I read 5 books, which is my goal every month roughly, and I had a really good reading month. But before we go ahead and get on into the books, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new bookish videos every Sunday and Wednesday and sometimes on Friday. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box for links to all of my social media, including my Buddy Read Discord and my Patreon, where you can be entered into winning quarterly book giveaways. As with all of my wrap-ups, I start with my lowest rated books and go up to my highest rated books. The first book I finished is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This is an adult fiction and it was recommended to me by one of my subscribers and sent to me, so thank you, Michael, once again. But in this book, we follow a whole cast of characters as they accidentally get held hostage by a would-be bank robber who just fled a failed bank robbery and flees into like an open house where people are looking at an apartment and decides to hold all the people there hostage. As we go through the book, we learn more about these characters, why they're there, some problems that they're facing in their life, and the characters all kind of come together to support each other during the different hard times of their life. So it's definitely a very ironic book because when you think bank robber, you think of someone who's trying to harm someone and not someone who's going to kind of offer sanctuary for someone else. But this book definitely has a very humorous tone, and so many of the subjects explored in this book are things that are not necessarily funny, and sometimes they're depressing, but Frederick Bachman just has a way to kind of spin regular day slice of life kind of situations and make them funny. And there were times where I actually did laugh out loud, which is very unusual for me in a book, so I really appreciated that about this story. And I also want to give kudos to the translator because I think this book was originally written in Swedish and the translator did an amazing job in being able to capture the author's tone and humor, and it was just really well done. Some of the things that I didn't like about this book is that I was unable to connect quite a bit to any of the things that these people were going through and experiencing. There was, for example, a father and son cop working together. There was a sapphic couple who was expecting their first child. There was an older married couple whose marriage was kind of on the rocks. Despite this being kind of like a slice of life book and exploring of things that are common to a lot of humans, I really couldn't connect with any of them. And I can recognize their story can be applicable to a lot of people. I can appreciate that. I personally just didn't connect to any of it. I also have a lot of trouble with just regular contemporary fiction. Like, I need, I don't know, magic and flying dragons and spaceships to really capture my attention. So it wasn't any fault of the author. It wasn't any fault of the story. I just don't read a lot of regular fiction. But I still had a good time reading this, and in the end, I ended up giving Anxious People 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to be talking about is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal. This is a YA fantasy, Middle Eastern inspired. It follows 2 different characters. It follows Safira, who is this girl, and she dresses up as a male, a hunter, to go into the forest to kill food and bring it back to her village for them to eat. And then we follow a prince named Nasir, and he is basically used as an assassin by his sultan father. And magic used to exist in this land and it disappeared. And some witches return and tell Safira that she needs to go to this magical place to retrieve this book to restore magic to the land. And the sultan finds out about this and sends Nasir to kill Safira and steal the book for himself. This book really just reminded me about how bingeable YA fantasy is. It was such a quick book to get through. It was a lot of fun. There's a lot of things that I've read before in other books that were in here, especially with regards to the world, such as Ifrits and Jinn and things like that. So if you really like Middle Eastern inspired fantasy, then I would definitely check this out. There also was a romance in the book that took me a little bit of a while to get on board with, but by the end, I was totally shipping the romance, and it is a big part of the book. So if you're not into romance in your fantasy, you might want to steer clear of this one. The things I didn't like about this book were the pacing. It took a good first third of the book for me to get hooked. I don't know why it took so long. And then we kind of picked up the pace quite a bit in the second 2/3 of the book. So I felt like that could have been expanded a little bit. And I felt like there were definitely a lot of tropes in this book that have been repeated quite a bit in YA fantasy. But having said that, it was still a lot of fun. I do plan on reading the sequel, and I gave We Hunt the Flame 3 out of 5 stars. And I do have a full spoiler-free review for this book if you want to hear more of my thoughts. The next book I read I got from my library, and that is Aurora Burning by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is book 2, and I think it's called the Aurora Cycle. This was one of my most anticipated 2020 releases because I read Aurora Rising in 2019 and loved it so much. But in this book, we follow a girl named Aurora, and in her present day, she actually ended up taking a ship. She was cryogenically frozen, and she got on a ship, and she was traveling to this planet where her father was working, and they were kind of preparing the planet to be inhabited. But then Aurora ends up waking up centuries into the future, and her family no longer exists, and she actually finds out the mystery about what happened to her father and what is actually happening in the galaxy. And not only that, she ends up coming into contact with a ragtag group of characters that come out of the Aurora Academy and end up taking a spaceship to go on a mission. This series is just so dang fun. It reminds me so much of Guardians of the Galaxy. We have such a misfit group of characters. We have some humans, we have some different types of species, we have an AI, and there's just so much humor in this book. I laughed out loud. I also listened to part of this on audio, and the audio is just so good with all of the sound effects, and there are voice actors for different characters. There is a really cute romance in this book. I will say that I enjoyed the second book a little bit less than the first book. There was something that went on between Aurora and a love interest towards the end of the book that I really didn't agree with and couldn't really get on board with. And this book is definitely very fast paced. It's go the whole time, and we did learn a lot to prepare us for book 3, which I cannot wait to read. So I ended up giving Aurora Burning 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is a standalone Sanderson book within his Cosmere, and it's the first book that he ever published. I'm really glad that I decided to pick this up because I really ended up enjoying it. So in Elantris, we follow a couple of different characters, but in this world, there was this city called Elantris, and it was known to be beautiful, perfect, lovely. Everyone wanted to live there. Elantrians themselves were these type of godlike beings, and they were beautiful and smart and almost immortal. But about 10 years ago, that all changed, and a curse kind of descended upon Elantris. The city started to decay. The Elantrians started to decay and become these zombie-like beings, and they couldn't access their magic anymore. So in present day, we follow Raoden, who is the current prince, and he ends up getting transformed by something called the Sheod and turning into an Elantrian. So he gets put in Elantris and treated as if he's dead. And then we follow Serene, who was betrothed to Raoden. So when she arrives at her new kingdom, she learns that her husband is dead, and she also learns that a lot of political machinations have been going on in this kingdom. So she kind of inserts herself into this political turmoil and tries to fix it. And then we follow a character named Hrathen, and he has been sent by the emperor of this kind of wannabe invading country to convert all the people of this country called Erelon, where Elantris is located, to this religion. And if he doesn't do that within a certain amount of time, then the empire is going to invade. So we have a lot going on in this book. We have Elantris uncovering the mystery there. We have the current turmoil in the country of Erelon as Serene tries to deal with that. And then we have this outside force of this empire called Fjordell. I had a lot of fun reading this book. I liked all of the characters. I love Serene. I thought that the politics were very interesting and very well done. I wasn't a huge fan of Hrathen and his storyline because I'm not really a fan of like religion playing a huge part in the plot of a book, and in this book it is a huge part. And I really enjoyed just the idea of Elantris, the magic system. I thought it was really unique and interesting. I just wish that it had been expanded upon because we only kind of learn how it works, and I just would have liked to see more how it worked and how the Elantrians accessed it, and just I felt like there could have been more to that part of the story. But this book is definitely heavy on the politics and political maneuverings, and it is very lacking on the action and the magic. So if you're someone that likes political fantasy, I would check this out. If you're someone who likes Brandon Sanderson, I would still read this. If you're just getting into Brandon Sanderson, I wouldn't start with this. But all in all, I had a lot of fun with it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. This is book 4 in the Stormlight Archives. It just got released in November. If you guys are not familiar, I just started reading the Stormlight Archives in 2020 and got all caught up, and I'm so glad I did because I had so much fun with this book. There are so many Cosmere connections in this book that now that I've read Elantris, it even adds to what I've read in Rhythm of War, and I really love how this book was focused on Navani and her journey. We learn a lot more about the magic system of the Stormlight Archives and what things are possible and what things aren't with regards to light. We also continue with Shallan's story and her internal conflict and how she deals with that. We get introduced to a situation in Shadesmar having to do with the Honor Spren because they refuse to bond to any more humans. So Shallan and Adolin have to go to Shadesmar to deal with that, and we kind of have a revelation there as well that's very interesting. We continue to follow Kaladin as he is dealing with his battle shock as well as some depression. And there was definitely a scene at the beginning of the book between Dalinar and Kaladin that kind of just grips your heart and pulls at your heartstrings. I will say that this book definitely did not feature Dalinar very much, or Yasna, or Renarin. It was definitely focused mostly on Kaladin and Navani at Irithiru. So if you're someone who really loves Dalinar and kind of being at war and on the front, that you might be a little disappointed that there's not much of those characters in this book, but I think that this book definitely had the most reveals so far in the series, and I think that this book definitely had the biggest ending, and I'm definitely highly anticipating the next installment in the series. I ended up giving Rhythm of War 5 out of 5 stars, and I also have a full review of this if you want to check it out. I'll link that up in the cards. It does have a non-spoiler section and then a spoiler-filled section. Okay, you guys, so that is it for my December wrap-up. All in all, I had a really good reading month. Let me know in the comments what you guys read in December or if you've read any of these books, and I will catch you guys in another video soon. Goodbye!
Thank you.